Hello.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Thursday night live stream, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Pedro. And you are looking live at a podcast that is trying to change people's lives for the better. Wouldn't you say that that's accurate?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that we're just trying to educate people and build bigger coalitions. Today was really hard. You know what? So normally the mobile school pantry is on Fridays.
Right.
And this week, educate people. You do that every time.
I don't do that every time.
You
every
do.
time usually my audio is off, so
No,
that's okay.
He does it every time. But this week they did it on Thursday, and so we were at the pantry doing distribution today, and it's hard. It's a lot. It's hard. It's physically hard, and so it's tiring. And usually I feel like Thursday evenings I'm in better sorts than I am.
Well,
today.
This will be more or less an exception to the rule. It is normally not this way. We normally are doing distributions on Friday, so we've kind of really, stacked up pretty hard today. I, in particular, was running around to the distribution at the pantry very early on in the day. Then I went to the gym. Then I went to this distribution, and now we're going live here. And we've got, I think, the current sort of like mid-season finale of Law and Order.
I don't
Organized
know.
Crime.
I don't know that I have that in me. I don't know.
We'll find out. And there's also the NBA playoffs, which I've been paying attention to, which is actually kind of a big deal. It's
here. Stop putting up like banners and patrons and stuff.
Oh, we got to put up banners
do something.
and patrons.
I mean, just something.
I guess I'm not fully attentive for Jen's liking right now.
No,
so
I think we need to. I wish we could get somebody to really help with social media. I've been saying that for 2 years because it's like it's so one of those things that I know you want it done right and you do it yourself, but the reality is that you end up spending an inordinate amount of time managing social media.
Well, we don't want to. Oh, we're not complaining about much, Declan, but we appreciate you coming on, and that's always good to see. We always like knowing that there's a Twitch supporter.
And that's him. That's Declan.
Of course it's Declan.
But we don't even know that his real name's Declan.
No, I could make him that up.
Exactly.
It could be.
Who knows?
But it's great to have all of you guys here. And obviously it's been an interesting week. But there is something that I do want to start with. And this is directed specifically at two groups. The first group I'm going to address is going to be the K-Hive. And
do we have any of those people on here? Like, do we get K-Hive
I don't think
people?
so. I don't think so. But
Declan, we should sick Declan on the K-Hive.
Yeah, I'm going to specifically address this right now because I think it's very important. The only thing I'm going to say about the K-Hive is I've observed enough of their behavior online to know that if Kamala Harris ever hopes to be president of the United States, it better be through Joe Biden stepping down, because the toxicity within that particular movement will nullify any chance of Kamala becoming president. I guarantee it.
Can I say something to the K-Hive?
Sure.
Okay. So I don't do the social media. So if you're being mean to me, I don't see it. That's really all I wanted to say. So your toxicity just festers in yourselves, I guess. It doesn't spread to me.
Tommy John, we really thank you for that wonderful support.
Thank you.
The other thing that I want to say, and this is coming from me, I don't really care what Jen has to say about it. She probably won't say anything.
Probably not.
If you have a problem with Jen's relationship with Vosh, the problem is you, not Jen. If you don't understand that there is something to be said for somebody who is not only fighting for the same things that you're fighting for, but has repeatedly apologized for his bad takes and things that he has said that either were completely wrong or completely taken out of context. Whatever that may be, it happens. But we are going nowhere fast if we think that we are going to arbitrarily remove somebody like Vosh from any type of non-corporate worker-based movement. The man just raised $300,000 for Palestinian children.
By himself.
By himself.
Just for sitting and playing video games for like 27, although he did 27 hours.
Now if you
just pretty impressive. He was pretty fried.
Now, if you want to call him a pedophile,
I'm so over that.
And whatever you want to call him, that's fine.
He's just so.
But if you want to cut Jen up at the knees because of the fact that Vosh really likes her, and let me just say, if Jen were ever to run for office again, having an asset like him to help spread the word can't be measured in just dollars. It's immeasurable as far as I'm concerned.
That's really, to me, neither here nor there.
But but
I just
again,
like him because he's just really cool, and I think he's smart, and I find he adds a very good amount of dialogue that needs to be had, and he represents a sort of very academic. I mean, yeah, sometimes there's the nonsense, potty mouth, silly stuff, and whatever. I don't care about that.
I disagree with.
Oh, I'm not even talking about anything real. I'm just talking about like sometimes he'll have like a potty mouth, but when he starts talking like really philosophical, debating, I mean, he's so smart, and you know what? Nobody is perfect. Nobody always says the right things all the time, and I'm so tired.
And
of
there
that
is a
whole
reason
idea.
why they say the left is for losers. Because losing is something that the left, in a way, sees it as a badge of honor. I don't want to lose. I want to win. And not only do I want to win, but I want to hold people accountable and recognize that they should be held to task for what they do. But throwing the baby out with the bathwater is never going to get us anywhere.
I just don't understand why people want to spend their time hating people for who they affiliate with, instead of just stay in your lane, do your thing, contribute in your own way, mind your business. Like, just go. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand content creators that spend time dissing other content creators. Like, I don't know. It's just, there seems like there's more important things to be doing.
No. And again, and one last thing I'm going to say, if anybody puts my name in their mouth and has something to say, it's not going to end well. It's just not.
What is going on out there in Twitter world that I don't know?
If anybody
something obviously went down today.
I happen to know somebody personally who lives down here in politics. A lot of people don't care for him, and that's fine. But anybody equating somebody in Miami politics as being my best friend, and that now I'm a toxic person for politics. Like I said, you're going nowhere fast. I can assure you of that.
I mean, you're going to have to fill me in on this whole story, but apparently,
no. There's really nothing to fill in here. Yeah, again, I'm from New Jersey.
Is our old friend that's a liability being a liability again?
No, somebody decided to put him in the conversation and say that I was best friends with him, and I'm thinking,
oh well, you know who puts that out there all the time. You know where that comes from.
That's from. Oh well, yes. I would say that there's probably some direct correlation to that. I have no doubt.
Sure, that's the person who's been putting that out the whole time.
But my point is, we're not going anywhere fast if we think that this is how we're going to make it.
No, it's completely unproductive.
It's not going to happen. So I would advise you all to at least recognize that if we are ever going to achieve anything in any type of a movement, it isn't going to just be with the left. It is going to be with a nonpartisan, non-corporate labor movement.
Yes.
That is how this is happening.
It's the only way.
And if you are not a part of it, then you are not part of the solution. You are part of the problem.
And what's interesting is that Vosh is the left. He's left of me. He's left of me.
I know.
Like, he's left.
But there are certain elements of the left movement that doesn't believe in accepting apology or doesn't believe.
No.
Again, some people are just not going to accept anything.
Well, because they're working backwards from their conclusion. They decide they don't like you, and they're going to have justifications for that. And that's just how it is. That's what happened with me here locally. That's just how these people work, which is why I just tune it out.
And I agree with you 100%. You can't just have a coalition of people that all share the same sentiments.
But that's what, unfortunately, a lot of the people in this part, at least our party politics down here in South Florida, that's very much what it's like. It's an echo chamber that if you step 1 foot outside of that, you're gone. You're castigated.
And look,
you're out.
We want to work with as many people as possible. I'm not trying to tell people that are, either upset with you or disagree with you about Vosh. That's fine. You can have that disagreement.
But what I don't understand, why is that a source of where I would want agreement? I don't need agreement from people on who I like and who I don't like. Like, I don't understand why people get to have an opinion.
That's the thing. It's not even about whether or not you did something wrong. It's that you are associating with somebody.
But why do we care?
They don't want you associating with.
Okay, so just to be very clear, I have no idea why he cares about this.
I care about this because I care about this because I want a living wage, because I want Medicare for all.
Yeah, this is very unproductive. Is that what you're saying?
I want to have a clean energy jobs infrastructure bill. I want to have the ability to not have to deal with this impending war in the Middle East. I am trying to do everything. We are trying to do everything in our power to try to curtail this issue. And so, nevertheless,
getting a little violent.
I know. So apparently, I have to move on now. So I will move on,
please.
And so that's it. Rants out of the system. Just wanted to let everybody know.
That wasn't part of our program.
No, but what is part of our program is News and Amuse, which is very important.
Switch it first.
Oh, I thought I have to add this.
No. First switch it. Now flip it, and then when you add it, it will be that.
Yay! See, I'm getting.
By the way, you haven't looked at the bootlicker graphic, have you?
I have.
I purposefully didn't send it earlier because I didn't want you to look at it before it comes up.
So as you guys
it's
know,
special.
A lot of things are going on right now, and it is, of course, the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And that's where a lot of this whole thing about Vosh came into question, because you and him he and you, whatever is the proper terminology. We are huge advocates for ending qualified immunity, which is what I call, there's not a lot of issues where I would say that there's a silver bullet per se.
But see, I don't think you always understand that that's great in terms of, obviously it's civil liability. What we really need to see is there to being more criminal liability. You see what I'm saying? Yes. Like I do understand that what you're talking about, ending ending qualified immunity is huge incentive.
And I agree. But I also think that ending qualified immunity really is the silver bullet, because the one thing that is the biggest impediment to progress within policing in the United States is the code of silence. Every good cop who would like to turn in a bad cop can't do it because of the code of silence.
Right.
And so if you eliminate if you end qualified immunity, you are now putting all of the financial pressure on the police departments, and that is something that will not stand.
Yeah.
There is no cop that is going to allow his pension to be reduced because of a crooked, dirty cop. It's not going to happen.
One would hope that, yes, we live in a world where you can't appeal to people based on moral grounds, but when it hits their wallet, then they'll care. Yes, that's where we are.
And so one can only hope that is if there's a legacy to George Floyd, if there is a legacy to his name and what could be done.
Should we speak up to this guy like Pelosi and thank him for sacrificing himself?
Cory Bush is the one who's fighting for ending qualified immunity.
Good.
So that's what we have.
No, it definitely needs to happen.
Yes.
But I think that we can't look at that and not also look at the criminal issues as well.
But as you know, the issue of racism is still very much embedded in certain cultural dynamics within society. And as we know, the anti-racism teaching band, of course, divides Oklahoma ahead of the Tulsa Massacre centennial. Now, I would assume most people are very well aware, or maybe not so aware, of the history of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was considered Black Wall Street for basically up until the massacre, which took place around like 1910.
Yeah, it was like right after the turn of the century, but it was like a very affluent Black, it was just a whole little hub.
But following the Civil War, this was the most affluent Black city in the United States, and so they made it a
We're not taught that.
No,
it's shocking.
Well, once again, this is the whole thing about critical race theory. Now, the idea is to basically be able to teach proper history about what actually went on. I did not know about the Tulsa Massacre until I was out of college. Like, I didn't even learn it in college. And I'm not saying where I went. I'm not going to do it.
He wants to. He wants to.
They shall not be named.
Rutgers.
You said it. I didn't say it.
But I think that we should talk about, though, what the anti-racism teaching band that they're talking about there. And I also want to point out big kudos, shout out to Oklahoma City School Board for taking a stand on this, because the Oklahoma City School Board they're not sure how they're going to go about handling it, but they're not just abiding this. So even though this passed at the state level, it's sort of like here when we talk about Florida, it's very county. I don't know how Oklahoma normally is, but I know that their city school board is not having this, that they're going to allow their teachers to teach what their teachers think is right to teach.
And that, of course, is only going to make it worse. But this is where again, institutional racism exists because we're not taught at a young age, a proper age, how these things actually became the way that they became, aside from all of the institutional issues that exist. But the hatred, the division, the other, the unknown, a lot of that stems from the fact that we have a very dark history, and a lot of people are afraid to admit it, or just want to pretend like it didn't happen. Much as I always say when it comes to General Eisenhower, when he was there during the liberation of Dachau, he said, take as many pictures as you can, film as much of this as you possibly can, because there will come a day in the not too distant future where somebody will stand up in a room and say this never happened.
Right.
And then eventually everyone will start to question whether it did or not.
Well, it freaks me out when, first of all, the way that they write the headline, anti-racism teaching ban. So it's a ban on anti-racism teaching. So seriously, when you think about that, like completely literally, that is the most ridiculous. That's like, you are not allowed to teach against hate. You are not allowed to do it. Don't you dare start teaching against hate. I mean, well, apparently Oklahoma's legislature is about as, on top of things as ours. But like the fact that this was what they focused their legislative session on is banning teachers from teaching. I don't even know that I like the term critical race theory. I really don't. Can we just call it accurate history and move on and just accept that? I mean, like, why is that a critical theory? It's not a theory.
But again, this gets back to the idea
real.
That you can, if we're dividing and conquering, it makes it a lot easier to do it when you're basically, whatever the dividing lines may be. It could be racial, social, economic. Well, actually, it's racial and social. That's what it always is. When it's economic, that's when it becomes a really big problem for the people in charge. So there's always this desire, would ultimately make this more of an issue. They don't want people to be talking about the systemic issues. They want them to be talking about issues that are more surface driven. They don't want to talk about critical race theory, but most people don't understand what it is. And most people assume that it's this anti-white, teaching. Again, anything.
That's why I don't like the phrase. Why are we labeling it critical race theory? Why are we not first of all, we should always be being critical. Right. Like, I think okay, so critical, and it's not theory about race. What theory? I don't understand. Why can't we just call it accurate history? I mean, it's just strange to me that has to have a name called critical race theory. I mean, no. So that's ridiculous.
And it doesn't. And again, it doesn't work. It's absolutely
anti-racist.
Well,
all right, we have to move on. I'm not sure what you're the one who forwarded me the Israel Lost the Culture War opinion piece.
Well, and before we get there, bill heading to Congress to ban seclusion restraints in schools.
Yes, this actually, people, had to be legislated that school SROs or school officers should not be allowed to physically restrain. Here, wait, what was it? The
school personnel
seclusion restraints in schools. Right. This actually had to be legislated, apparently. So up until this, apparently they're allowed to physically use restraints and seclusion. And I believe that this specifically says that in cases where it's unnecessary, something ridiculous like that. So in other words, they had to be taught to not do this. But yeah, I found that really just sort of pathetic.
Well,
and we had a lot of other really serious things to talk about.
Yes, we do have of course we have other serious things to talk about, and we're not going to get too deep into the weeds, but the one thing that has happened, obviously, you've shared your sentiments as far as, what's going on with Israel-Palestine. This is an issue that is very sensitive. And again, for anybody who thinks that Jen can just blurt out anything she wants, come to South Florida and you'll understand. It's not. Well, listen, you know what? To the credit of at least one person who is Jewish and lives in the area, they actually came on the thread of the posts that we had made recently and said, I want to push the Palestinians out of Israel and push them into Jordan. Mm-hmm. You know what? At least they're, disagree, but at least they're honest about what they believe. Yeah, they believe that Israel is bound to the Jewish state, an ethno-Jewish state, and Palestinians who are Muslim need to get the hell out of our country. Yeah, that's what they believe.
But it's interesting, the disconnect between what people are willing to accept. So if you understand that you're forming a state based on one ethno group, then in order to maintain that, you have to maintain a majority of that ethno group. Thereby default, you have to rid the other group. So it's like ethno-state of one group is ethno-cleansing of another. And, when people want to sit there and bicker about the term ethnic cleansing or genocide, I could find definitions of those things that do not mean that somebody just shoots you right there. There's a variety of things that when you're talking about eliminating a population, it could be totally getting rid of their access to the things that people need to live. It could be just restricting their freedom, taking away their culture, taking away their land that's important to them. There are a lot of ways to sort of rid ourselves of a group that isn't necessarily just shooting everyone dead. And you can find definitions about this on genocide. And actually, my late uncle, Jack Sandler, wrote an entire book on genocide. He was actually an expert on genocide, yes, and was a professor at the University of South Florida. And so this is something with which I'm well versed. And there are absolutely definitions of that do not necessarily mean just mass gas chambers and ovens. That is one way to ethnically cleanse and commit a genocide. That's one way to do it. But when you reduce people to just zero life expectancy because they have no access to anything, that's doing it as well. So the fact that people want to quibble over what's ethnic cleansing and what's genocide, it's ludicrous that we're having this discussion. And absolutely 100% Israel is an apartheid state. It is, by definition. There's separate laws for separate people, separate highways, separate things, not full rights. That is apartheid. And I do believe that I forget which international organization, but that's usually pretty more pro-Israel has even called this an apartheid state. This is not, you guys want to argue it because it makes you feel better and you don't want to have to come to terms with it. You don't want to have to acknowledge it.
No, and I think that's just something they come at you even harder because you are a Jew and you are from one of the most heavily concentrated Jewish populations in the United States, the second largest, as a matter of fact. And so for them, they really see you as a traitor.
I know.
For not just completely towing the line. Ironically, at least one of them happens to be a hardcore Republican.
Well, they
usually are.
It's not,
but again, for any of you who think that it's that easy to navigate this minefield, it isn't, because.
But I don't mind. I'll say what I think. Like, I don't feel, like I'm not going to not say what I think because somebody isn't going to like it. I don't particularly care if they like what I say or they don't like what I say. It is, you could not like that I call it an apartheid state. I understand that might upset your feelings, but that doesn't change the fact that it is in fact an apartheid state. So this is one of those things where I'm going with reason and your feelings are just, unfortunately, don't matter to me.
No. And again, this is just something where somebody eventually has to speak up. Somebody eventually has to say that this is a very serious problem, which it is. And it's not going to end well. And the biggest reason it's not going to end well is because of Bibi Netanyahu. And he is a tyrant. I mean, he's a war criminal, for God's sake. And you have shared many sentiments as far as him just basically being somebody who is going to do anything and everything in order to keep his power.
I do believe that the recent attacks of by Israel on Gaza and just the recent rash of this that needed to be called a ceasefire as if this is somehow like a two-sided conflict. But I do believe that this was the product of Netanyahu needing a distraction and wanting to avoid any sort of prosecution. As long as he stays in office and in control, then he avoids prosecution. And I think that this is all very, it's very politically motivated. Yes, but I think it's very personally politically motivated by him. I do.
Yes.
And I think he's a horrible person. And I think that he's also extremely smart, which is, to me, a scary combination. And I think he's pretty evil. I do.
Well, the other thing that I will mention, for those of you who may not have seen it, but I happen to just somehow stumble upon it on YouTube, there's a video of Netanyahu from 1978 where he does say, and I quote, "Our goal as an Israeli nation is to push all Palestinian Muslims out of our country and into Jordan." That is the goal. And there are a lot of people who feel this way, who feel that, Israel should be a Jewish state fully. There should be no exception. Again, this is...
But yet that cannot happen unless you get rid of the other ethnicities. So it's like you cannot say that you support the idea of an ethno-state, but then say you don't support ethnic cleansing. How are you going to have your ethno-state? How are you going to create that? Where are all the other people going to go? I mean, it's like the one necessitates the other. So you can't have that both ways.
Well, and again,
and that's you know what it is? It's an inconvenient truth for a lot of us Jews. I'm sorry, but it is. And it sucks, but it's just the truth.
Well, for those people who don't want to address it, of course, this is exactly where it's going at this point. And it is going to have to be addressed because people are not they're not going to be quiet about it this time. This is something that is very serious. And I think what has happened this time, and the reason I think it's different, is because Netanyahu has been so blatantly deliberate with his endless bombing of the Gaza Strip that people are just looking at it and saying, this is like genocide. I mean,
it's like pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. He went too far.
He did.
But you know what?
That's usually what happens. They usually bite off more than they can chew. That's what ends up happening. That is exactly why we are faced with what we're faced with, where a lot of people are having a very hard time coming to terms with the fact that a culture that in many instances throughout human history they have attempted to wipe off this planet, has members in their own ranks that are trying to do the same thing to another.
Right. It's a very difficult, it's very cognitive disconnect. But yet it is true.
Yes.
And it's the Israel thing is really harsh because there's really, the worst part is that when people say, okay, so what's the solution? I have not yet heard anybody say what is the solution.
That is a great point.
Because whether we like, what do we do at this point? Like, I am being very 100% legitimate. I would love somebody to come on that really has some sort of plan. And I mean the logistics of what do you do with Gaza? What do you do? And I am so tired of people saying that this is a Hamas problem. It's only a Hamas problem because we've said it's a Hamas problem and we've allowed it to be a Hamas problem because that way it's not our problem. If we wanted to handle that in a better way, we would handle that in a better way.
So I do have a question, and I assume that Steve Donziger will be here shortly. Why can't we have a two-state solution? Why is that not feasible?
Well, I just think that that's some sort of like pie in the sky thing that they put out there to somehow maintain the cognitive disconnect. The cognitive disconnect being that you can have a Jewish state without having the opposite of that. So like you can have an ethno state without having ethnic cleansing, and that sort of justifies it. But here's the problem with the idea of a two-state solution. Okay, seriously. Who gets what? Who goes where? How are you going to possibly do that? And then it's like, then you're talking about the real issue is Jerusalem, which, is holy to Palestinians and to Jewish people. Right. And so it's not.
And of course, if that were to happen,
don't think that's.
If there was even a possibility of a two-state solution, that the Israelis would dig their heels into the ground and say Jerusalem's ours under no circumstances.
The Israelis have been the impediment to the two-state solution more than not. And this has been the case since, from my knowledge of like history in my lifetime, Rabin was the only prime minister, Yitzhak Rabin, that was really wanting to address the situation. And this was before, of course, you have the right wing coming in and just totally fanning the flames and increasing settlements. And when Rabin was there, there was a point before they went all over and against all international law where there could have been some sort of something. And then they killed him. And I don't think that's a coincidence. But yeah, I think that for the most part, Israel has no desire to share. They really don't. And certainly not the right-wing party that's in power right now.
So then I guess the question becomes, would anything change? Is anything possible to change if Netanyahu were to be taken out of power?
Well, you could look. I do know for like in Israel, the people that live there, it's like the people who live here. We had Trump as president, but I certainly wasn't a fan. I didn't support him. I'm just a person that was stuck living in this country with him. And we have to understand that Israel works like that too. So there's a whole bunch of people in Israel that are not supportive of the right-wing government, that are on the left over there and do support Palestinian rights and do not like these things. There is a resistance. We never see that. We do not get that news because they don't want us to know that.
No, of course, but they don't want to know that there's any kind of a resistance.
So let me be clear when I talk about like Israel, Israel, I'm talking about the current government. I'm talking about Netanyahu, right-wing imperialism. I don't like it when we do it. I don't like it when our little ancillary arm in the Middle East does it either. I don't like it. So,
well, how does if you are free to comment on it, but how does your family feel about it?
Well, you're talking about like beyond my parents, right?
Yeah. I'm talking like the ones who are they in Jerusalem? Is that where they are?
I do have family in Jerusalem. I would never, the truth is that they wouldn't know that I would ever say this. I mean, like, this isn't something that would come up, but they've thought me totally, they've wrote me off a long time ago because I'm not Jewish enough anyway for them.
See, that's the thing that you've told me before, which again, I can't really speak to, but perhaps you can speak better to it, is much like any other culture, and this is very much more common. This is not as common in Western culture. This is much more common in Eastern culture, where people believe in like a caste system. They believe in this hierarchy. You're not, I know that this is true in Indian culture. I know it's true in different Asian cultures, and I would assume, obviously, in Israeli or Jewish culture that this is another thing.
In Judaism, it's not like caste. It's just different sects, and a lot of people that tend to be very, very Orthodox don't think that the people that are not as Orthodox are really Jewish. They're just judgy as to, you're not religious enough, you don't really count, you're not, and they don't like that.
It sounds like political labels. It sounds like that. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So here we are basically trying to figure out ways to not get along. We should probably message John.
Do you want to do bootlicker?
I think while we're here, we are going to. It's so bad. Well, that's a great name for that. So as a lot of you know, this was
and look, okay, so you see that, and then you see I gave him a tattoo.
Oh, yeah, that's just so. Talk about violence, guys. Our bootlicker of the week is none other than Maria Cantwell, U.S. Senator from the state of Washington. For any of the whole Washington friends of ours that are out there, I'm sure they appreciate this.
Bootlicker of the week.
I mean, this is...
And mind you, this is a Democrat. At first, I wasn't really, I thought, God, Washington's a pretty Democratic place. She is a Democrat.
Yes.
Okay, so guys, our Senate is currently preparing a $10 billion bailout fund for Jeff Bezos, because his little space fund project didn't get picked up, just like Elon Musk's in their little mine is bigger than yours contest. And poor little Jeff Bezos
could be out a lot of money.
Oh my goodness. And so our Senate is actually putting together a $10 billion bailout for Jeff Bezos.
10 billion.
Let that sink in. And this is the woman who is leading the charge on that legislation.
That's incredible. I mean, it really is. I mean, when I came across that, I told you, I said, oh, this, again, you walk a very fine line when you attack certain people or basically hang certain people out to dry, but there is no excuse for this. This is so beyond the pale, and this is so proving the point that you are bought and paid for by corporate special interests. And that, to me, is a really big issue. Apparently, Stephen is still on with Katie Halper right now, so that's why there's
I knew she sort of hijacked our guest.
Yeah, that's not good.
And on her show, he has Roger Waters with him because they're friends, and this was one of their, the things they've been working on together with the indigenous people in Ecuador.
Well, I would assume that we will have him on shortly, but let's obviously continue with Marie Can't Do Well, which of course is what she is not doing.
Oh, God. People of Washington. Where's Jason Call on? Is he on here? Where's Jason Call when you need him?
For real. But this is just more, well, again, this just speaks to an even bigger issue. We've obviously talked at length about the fact that Pramila Jayapal has not come out in support of whole Washington, has not really pushed for single-payer healthcare to the degree that she really needs to if she really believes in leading the charge on it, because she isn't. Yes, we do, Walker. That is, and listen, I know it's simple to say something like that, but it's true.
Yeah, clearly.
We do need better
Well,
reps.
I mean, she's just not our rep. She's Jeff Bezos's rep. I mean, she's representing somebody. It's just not, who you think she's supposed to represent.
But I don't think Jeff Bezos lives in the state of Washington.
It doesn't matter. His business does.
That's well, Amazon is headquartered in
Seattle.
Seattle. Okay, well, that makes sense. So again, when we say
she his bitch,
yeah. Again, this is where you have bought and paid for elected officials.
We need to get Kashama Sawant on here.
That would be wonderful. Anybody who has a connection with Kashama Sawant, want to help us out? Love to have her on.
Yes, we would.
And she would be the kind of person I believe that could primary Pramila, and that would be something.
That would be interesting.
And the reason I say that is because either you're going to fight for what you say you're going to fight for, or you're not going to fight for it. And the only way people ever respond is if they are pressured. And that's what's ultimately going to happen here. Yes, Declan, we know. Demanding better representation is violence. We get it. It's, what are we supposed to do?
We can't protest. We can't be violent. We can't protest non-violently.
No, we can't.
We can't do anything right.
Is John even here this evening? Or is he doing something with his show?
I don't know.
Maybe. We'll find out.
I don't know. I can't imagine he would not be present.
No, he's not here right now. But listen, he may be doing something. So got to find out what's going on. But
yeah, we'll find out where our guest is. Or we're being better offered.
Yeah,
is what's happening. Essentially,
we've been big leagued.
We've been big league. We've been better offered because he's on with and again, he's coming on our show. He's not bringing his friend Roger Waters with him. On Katie's show, he has Roger Waters with him.
Yes. Well, again, that's
we're small potatoes.
He took the words out of my mouth. As of right now, we are, and that's okay.
Small potatoes.
That doesn't mean that our show is any less interesting than the next show.
No, it is certainly. We're fascinating people.
But again, as it relates to Maria Cantwell and like anybody else who's in politics, if you are looking for any particular area where you can dial it directly in and say, yes, this is why we have a serious problem here in this country. If Jeff Bezos wants something, he is just going to give money to that problem. And when you are corporate owned, as Maria Cantwell is, that is where this is going to become a serious problem. And so henceforth, a $10 billion subsidy. And what is Jeff Bezos doing with this money? What do you think he's doing with it?
Investing it in himself. What do you mean what's he doing it?
He's buying MGM Studios.
I didn't realize it was for sale.
Everything is for sale if you present it at the right price, which was just a shade under $10 billion.
Oh, so basically the government is funding
correct
a big merger of sorts to further consolidate our media empires. That's basically what that is.
Jill, my friend, I don't know why you think that China, Russia, and USA are in a huge space race, because I don't know what we're racing to. We're racing to get off this planet before it's dead. I guess that's what people are trying to do.
I don't understand what they're racing to do. Where are they going? What's the
I
point?
don't know. I don't know.
I think we would be better served just, really kind of working on what we've got going on here.
Yeah, and I think we obviously have a lot to work on going on here. And this is and again, Walker with a very good point. Yes, everything is for sale when you are a billionaire.
But so essentially, this is our government subsidizing a major media merger. Correct. That's what that's doing, and further consolidating power in one company in terms of our information that we have access to, because that is what we're talking about. That's really this is scary. That's scary, and it isn't even about the $10 billion. That's just we're bailing out Jeff Bezos.
Well, again, this is why I keep telling people, you keep pointing the finger at the everyone always wanted to say that Trump was the biggest tyrant alive. Trump can't hold a candle to Jeff Bezos or any of these other guys. These guys literally buy people, and he bought Maria Cantwell. That's a fact. And this is one of the biggest reasons why Kashama Sawant is so popular. And she may just be a city council member, but she is a city council member in Seattle, which, while it may be a mid-major city in comparison to other major cities in the United States, it is still a city that houses some of the most powerful corporations in the world. We're not just talking about Amazon. We're also talking about Boeing. We are also talking about Microsoft.
Well, it's big pharma. It's the fossil fuel industry. It's
Yes.
all of it. They're all, it's.
And why is that? Why is Washington such a big state for this? Because Washington has no state income tax. That's a big deal. And we're talking billions upon billions in savings that obviously go to shareholders. And remember, most of these corporations do not invest in their employees. So that's one of the biggest problems that we face now. And so ultimately, this consolidation of power is only going to get worse. And the fact that so much of the time is spent by so many people on the left defending Biden and saying, oh, the Democrats have the Republicans to worry about. Look at what your own freaking party is doing. This is so much worse than almost any legislation that can go. A $10 billion subsidy so this guy can not lose anything on a space mission, and now is buying a major film studio. I would say that that's pretty serious. I mean, I've always said Jeff Bezos' intention is to rule the world. That's his goal. And the more he is able to get away with buying off our government, or the more he's able to do it with complete impunity, is why we are going to be in this pickle for so very long.
He reminds me of Lord Farquaad from the Shrek movies, which was John Lithgow was the voice, but he reminds me like this very.
I have not seen a single.
Okay,
Shrek
so
movie.
the whole premise is this guy is like this tall, and he wears these fake legs so that he looks like he's really tall because he's so insecure. This king or whatever, and he's just yeah. That's what I think of when I think of Jeff Bezos. I think of Lord Farquaad from Shrek movies. And for anyone who saw that was, yeah, he's a very small man that needs to really compensate for a lot. You know, it's pathetic actually. And, yeah, I mean, as somebody like there's probably a myriad of things he is compensating for. I wouldn't, say what it is, but something.
Well, that unfortunately is true for a lot of these men. They have very low self-esteem, high ego, the constant need to prove themselves. And this is just another example of this endless race. Again, there's nothing that Jeff Bezos can do that will ever satisfy his desires.
I look at him and I think that he was the kid that was getting swirlies in the toilet and getting wedgies at gym, and they were mean to him and shoved him in lockers, and he was like, I will get my revenge on everybody. And that's how I see him. He is like the villain in in a movie. It's like it's not even real, and he's just pathetic to me.
And you wonder how
now
much,
we're giving him 10 billion.
But then you worry, how much worse is this going to get? That's the thing. This is just the beginning. This is only going to get worse. When we are attempting to sort of rise up in the United States and demand better, we are not going to get anywhere if we don't recognize that it's kind of like, I think that this is, I don't want to use this as an analogy. It's kind of like if you're trapped in the gas chamber and you're trying to grasp for air that isn't there. And that's what's going to happen for a lot of people. They're going to be grasping at something that isn't there. You think that you're fighting for something, but in the end of the day, there is this big brother that literally is covering everything, and they will stop whatever gets in their way.
Well, yeah, no, he won't be happy until he owns the air, the water, and all the food. And that's basically where we're going. And now our government is subsidizing it, like basically pushing that, because that's what that is.
And again, we're going to have Farron Cousins from Fair and Balanced come on very soon.
Did you reach out?
Yes,
Because
I
definitely, he is, you recently had told me that he does live in Florida. He lives in Northern Florida.
He lives in Floribama.
But he is very well versed on what is going on in our springs in Florida with Nestle and what they're doing with our water here. And I want somebody to really explain that.
Yeah, we could have made that one of the stories, but I think it's better if we can bring on somebody who really understands what's going on
because
there.
this is a really important thing.
This is a serious problem. It is a very serious problem. They are Nestle is pumping out 1 million gallons of water a day. This is from, do you remember the name
they're
of the
basically spring? They're extracting our water and selling it back to us. That's what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, and this is something like, how in Alaska, the people get dividends based on the resources.
Oh, we don't get shit.
Right. So in Florida, if they want to be extracting the water, we should be getting paid dividends.
It's called Ginny Springs. That's what this is called. This is in northern Florida. Nestle Waters, North America.
Our whole spring system is like so special. Like this is not. It's just, this is really upsetting. So anyway, we're going to have Farron Cousins on. He really knows the whole background of this whole story with Nestle.
Farron Cousins comes across to, hey, listen, if I was Farron Cousins, I would be angry too. How could you not be angry? This is our lives. We talked about, we obviously had Paul Ehrlich on recently talking about overpopulation, and everybody was up in arms. Well, when you have limited resources such as water and you don't have enough to supply for everybody, then you do have a problem when people are concentrated in very specific areas. South Florida, particularly Southeast Florida, happens to be one of those areas where we are extremely concentrated in terms of population. And of course, when it comes to clean drinking water, Florida's had problems with clean drinking water for a very long time. This is not a new thing. I can remember coming down here as a kid when my grandparents lived in Palm Beach County, and they would always be purchasing gallons, jugs of water from the supermarket. They would not be drinking out of the tap.
I don't remember, like growing up, I don't remember we had the thing. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the drinking water being like an issue, but I don't remember ever it really tasting good either. But
I do think that Disney is going to be under a lot of pressure, Blue Bandit, to make some changes. But it all depends on how much, because again, $15 an hour is good, but where does that stand as far as hours are concerned? And of course, you're dealing with an even bigger issue. The cost of living in the Orlando metro area is very expensive, and it's only going to get more expensive because it is a very big population hub center. So demanding better is very, very important. And that is a good segue to what is a very important part of the federal legislation that can make a big difference here in Florida, and that, of course, is the PRO Act. If we are able to alleviate ourselves from right-to-work laws that exist here in Florida, that is going to be tremendously important for any type of labor movement uprising in the state. A lot of people do not get involved and do not take any chances from a labor perspective because this is a right-to-work state and it is always on the side of management. That is true for unions who don't want to take a step out. This is, I think, it is the most important piece of legislation that Biden could put through that would make a significant difference in our lives. I can't stress enough that getting the PRO Act through Congress, that would be the signature issue.
It would. I have significant doubts of the ability of that to get through the Senate.
Well, again, why would they not want it to get through? They wouldn't want it to get through because basically all Republicans and a lot of Democrats are in favor of right-to-work laws, because that's what their donors are in favor of. That's really what it comes down to. The whole system at the top is messed up, but the system at the very bottom isn't. And we have an opportunity to get involved at the local level. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to be involved with the Democratic Party, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But if the infrastructure is there where you actually could get involved and make an impact, then there's no reason not to. That's why I do it. That's why Jen does it. I do it a different way. Jen does it her way.
What do I do?
I don't know what you do, quite frankly.
No, what are you?
I'm the treasurer of the Broward Progressive Caucus.
Oh, okay. What do I do?
You run GenCorp and do food distributions, and you are doing the homeless bags. If you want to talk about that again.
I am doing homeless bags. Yeah, we're gonna be doing distributions. My friend turns out to be in the business, and she's donating 100 bags. So we're gonna kick off that. Our first.
And when is that going to be?
I don't know. June.
It will be this upcoming month?
Yeah, I want to arrange, and I have to call that guy again, because I did email him, or I messaged him, and I texted Katie and said, hey, Steve was supposed to be on here at 8:30. His assistant confirmed. She probably doesn't care.
We'll see.
Yeah. So anyway.
Amazon, well, yes, Amazon is taking over the world, but Jeff Bezos is taking over the world. You are always going to find one person in particular at the top, whose intentions are always to seize as much power as humanly possible. People say that, we can't ever have another Hitler. Well, That's not true. You absolutely can. It just so happens that he was a tyrant who decided to start killing people before he fully took over everything. If he had just intended to take over everything, there would have been no stopping him. He absolutely would have been able to accomplish his mission. And again, this is why everyone always says that Trump could have easily taken over, but he was too dumb and incompetent to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But that doesn't mean that another person who is like Trump, but is infinitely more competent, wouldn't be able to accomplish that. And I'm not saying that they're going to start, with the gulags and all that. What I am saying, do we really want to chance it? We don't have a country that has the interests of the people at heart anymore. And it hasn't been that way for a while, but now it's really over the top. And while I do agree with Blue Bandit and others that the idea of having a $15 minimum wage is good, it's certainly better than what we have now, which is a slave wage. Now, $15 an hour might not be a slave wage, but it's just above the poverty line.
It's still not a living wage.
It's not a living wage.
And that's a big distinction. I mean, the fact that we're fighting over the $15 an hour when that's still not a living wage is just really shows you how little we have come to accept as what's normal. Like we really don't expect much here. We have a very low expectation.
We have a very low bar, but again, that can always change. And why can that always change? Because the people are aware. They just don't necessarily know where to direct their anger. One of the things that'll be interesting is there is a plan right now for a Medicare for All march in the United States. Now, all of the details are not available as of yet, but it does look to me like things are starting to take shape, which is good. And that could ultimately lead to something very big. So one of the things we are going to do here on the podcast is our goal is ultimately to do a Medicare for All telethon a couple of days prior to the actual march and get there you go, July 24th. So
there it is.
Our plan would hopefully be to do something, figure on like the 22nd, something like that. If the march is on a Saturday, which I'm pretty sure it is. And so far, Commie John letting us know Seattle, LA, DC, Detroit. I have no doubt New York is going to find its way into this. I would imagine Chicago will as well. Maybe we'll get Miami. That would be cool.
Well, somebody will probably put something together here. I wouldn't be surprised if
Or Orlando. Orlando would be fine too. Orlando is much more progressive than Miami.
Well, yeah.
So I would definitely say that the ability to put this together on a major scale would be very important. Now, is corporate media going to ignore it? Of course they are. They're going to do whatever they have to do to pretend like it's not happening.
But when you say we're doing a live stream telethon, what's the ask?
You know what? That's a good question.
Yes.
So what do you guys think the ask should be? Maybe the obvious one, as simplistic as it may be, when we did the Assange telethon, the call was to call the Attorney General's office and to ask them not to prosecute.
Correct.
So we could theoretically be calling, I don't know, Pramila Jayapal's office and demand that Medicare for All be brought to the floor for a vote. We could be calling Bernie Sanders' office and doing the same thing. Okay.
So we need to figure out like what the ask is to do a live stream. And it could also be to encourage people, especially, that live in any of those cities, to get out and if they're willing to be in public, go to their events.
Yes, I would agree. And I do think that is very important. But again, there you go. So there you go. Real Progressives is planning an all-day live stream with live streamers on the ground, multiple cities.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So we would do something ahead of that and promote that.
100%.
Which, and you know what though, but I would think what we would do is we would do it in a format where we're really having expert people coming on and talking about things in healthcare and not just having it be a whole bunch of just regular talking heads just saying we want Medicare for all. Like we need to obviously but I do think that the ask is going to be to promote that day and make sure everybody's aware of that day.
And what the ask is going to be, because again, a call to act, this is the biggest mistake. Commie John would agree to this. I have no doubt 1,000%, as would anybody else. And by the way, Steve Donziger should be here shortly. He just left the Katie Halper show. Perhaps your text did play a role. We never know.
I texted Katie.
And so Stephen is here. And so the last thing I will say is this is very, very important. If we are going to have a successful Medicare for All march, it is only going to be successful if there is a call to action. Having a lot of people in the street is great. Having them do something in addition to that is
there needs
what
to
may
be an
get
ask.
something done. And that's the goal. And speaking of the interconnectedness between the three biggest components of our society, which of course is big agriculture, big pharma, and of course, big oil, Steve Donziger is not only an attorney, he is a champion of climate justice, successfully sued Chevron, one of the biggest polluters on the planet.
And also there's an intersection between what we're talking about and indigenous communities, because we're talking about, this was in Ecuador,
right?
And this was on behalf of the indigenous community in Ecuador. I don't know the name. We're going to find out.
Well, you're the attorney and he's an attorney. So the attorneys are going to speak. And
I'm an attorney that hasn't practiced in a long time and partakes in the cannabis.
Yeah, but
so we're not, you know what,
the
brain cells are not what they once were.
Well. But for somebody that we have a hell of a lot of respect for, and
we love whistleblowers and people that speak truth to power. And by the way, let it be known that this whole case, we're going to talk with Steve about this.
Yes.
Is just this ridiculous. I mean, I even heard him refer to it as a kangaroo court situation. This is the most ridiculous prosecution thing.
Stephen, you've been doing this long enough. I think you know that our courts have been heavily compromised, to say the least. But we welcome you to Generational Change. We're very excited to have you here.
Wait, we're not letting him come on without me prefacing with, okay, thank you for finally leaving Katie Halper's show. It was fun watching you on Katie. I actually texted her.
Jen and Katie are friends.
I texted her and I said, he was supposed to be on here. So I don't know, but thank you, Katie. Thank you. And I also want to point out to everybody that you
should have brought Roger Waters.
Yes,
with you.
had you brought Roger Waters with you, it would have been a very good, nice little peace offering.
Probably jump on if you wanted him. I can call him. You want me to?
I don't know if I could handle that.
No, why not? Go ahead. Let's have a little fun.
Let me see.
Okay, then I have to call my husband in here because he'll flip out.
And even though we're just getting started and we're going to move this all around social media, Steve, if you want to retweet the live feed, I first want to tip of the hat to Marianne Williamson and especially to Susan Sarandon, who have put themselves out there for you. And especially the fact that Susan is willing to do it, knowing that it really puts her at odds with a lot of people in the line of work that she's in. What more can you say? No, she just, again, completely admirable. And again, I was aware of this, but I didn't really fully grasp everything that was going on until, Crystal and Sagar had them on to talk about this case. I mean, it really brought everything to light. And while I think a lot of people understand the power of big oil in the United States, I don't think they fully understand just how ruthless they can be if you get in their way. And so if you could talk about that right off the bat, the ruthlessness of Chevron, because you got in their way, what that's been all about.
Well, thank you. And I apologize for being late. I didn't know that you knew I was on Katie's show.
I was watching. I was being all prepped.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. And in all seriousness, the short story is I helped indigenous peoples in Ecuador win a historic pollution judgment against Chevron back in 2011 for $9.5 billion. Since that time, Chevron has used 60 law firms, 2,000 lawyers, and probably about $2-3 billion to try to demonize, criminalize me, and attack me, and really destroy my life. And it's culminated over the last 2 years of me being put under house arrest without being convicted of a crime. Not by the government, but by a private Chevron law firm called Seward and Kissel. Now, you might be saying, what the F?
I don't understand.
How does that happen in America?
I saw how it happened, but I still don't understand how you are literally stuck in your house based on no due process. I
have an ankle bracelet. This is the battery. This is the battery. I stick this around the bracelet is on my left ankle. It's shackled. It's a black thing, and it hasn't come off for 659 days. I
do criminal defense. I'm familiar with the bracelet.
Okay, so
I am.
Usually electronic monitoring is like an alternative to prison. In my case, it's designed, since I didn't commit a crime and I've never committed a crime and I'm only charged with a misdemeanor, it's really designed to keep me locked by Chevron, to keep me locked up so I can't do my human rights work successfully, as I had been doing, and continue to hold the company accountable by enforcing the Ecuador judgment against their assets in other countries. When I was charged criminally by this judge in the United States, I was in Canada working with lawyers there to enforce the Ecuador judgment. And I had to come back, and I was shocked that they locked me up. I'm the only person in America, lawyer or non-lawyer, who's been deprived of his liberty prior to trial on a misdemeanor. And it's been almost 2 years. The max sentence, by the way, ever given a lawyer convicted of what I'm charged with is 90 days of home confinement.
Right. So if and when this does get somewhere, there's a likelihood that you're still going to get time. Now, the question is, would they give you time served?
Well, I think they shouldn't obviously let me go at that point based on the time I've already spent at home for a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
That's not really what this is about. From the
it's reprisal. It's reprisal, right? I mean,
it's retaliation, it's punishment.
Talk a little bit about the background of the case in Ecuador and how you got involved in it and what Chevron was doing to the people there.
Okay. By the way, my name is misspelled on your.
It is. Oh, did I?
There's no
I have the
N.
N. All right.
The second.
Not here. Do you see? This is me.
No,
that was him.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Me?
So I'm.
Then you say attorney, non-attorney. I get it. No, I'm just joking.
We're saying.
So this is what happened. Texaco, which is now owned by Chevron, went into the Ecuadorian Amazon in the 60s and signed a contract. Thank you. To drill over a 1,500 square mile area, and they over 30 years, by design, this was not an accident. They deliberately dumped literally 16 billion gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into rivers and streams that indigenous peoples relied on for their drinking water, their bathing, and their fishing. When they started to do this deliberate dumping, many of the indigenous leaders approached the Texaco engineers and said, what is this? Like, what's this black stuff in our water? And the Texaco engineers had a policy to tell them that it was like milk, it contained vitamins, and they had nothing to worry about. The level of abuse is something I really had never even seen before or witnessed or even heard about. And over years, there was just this mass industrial poisoning of what had been a pristine, beautiful rainforest, a place where the people who lived there didn't need any money to be rich. I mean, I tell that to children. I often go speak in schools, and it's like, one of the questions I ask kids is like, can you imagine a world where you can be rich and not have money? Okay. This was that place.
Yeah.
People had no money, but they had food, they had clean water, they had, the medicines of the forest, the shelter, culture, happiness, prosperity. And it was all, thousands of years of this was literally wiped out in a matter of 10 years because Texaco went in and played God and decided to save $3 a barrel on their production costs. They were going to dump billions of gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into the waters that people needed to survive. And to this day, I mean, no one knows how many people have actually died because the data is so, limited. But I can tell you from the data that does exist, plus my anecdotal experience visiting these villages, I've been there 250 times. I assure you thousands of people have died of cancer because of this. It is, as Paul Passimino of Amazon Watch says, it is a slow mass murder. 3-5 people every day, day after day, year after year. Thousands of people are dying, and thousands more will die unless this problem is addressed, unless Chevron complies with the court judgment, pays the money so there can be a cleanup.
Yeah, it's so outrageous, and yet we know this happens, but it really happens to the most vulnerable people that are not in a position to speak up for themselves. And it's very fortunate for them that someone like you took this on. How did you first get into where you were in Ecuador and even know of this?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I learned about this in the early 90s when I was still in law school, and a very good friend of mine's father was from Ecuador. And he was an American citizen, but he's like, he heard about it, and he's like, you can't believe what's going on down in my country. And he organized, his name is Cristobal Boniface. He organized a trip of lawyers and scientists to go do an investigation. And we all went down there in April of 1993. There's pictures of me on that trip. I wish you had them to put up. Didn't have the gray hair I do now. But, toured the area, and we witnessed what can only be described as an apocalyptic nightmare. I mean, there were literally lakes and pools of oil on the ground of the forest that had been left there by Texaco. They had built 1,000 open-air, unlined toxic waste pits. They dumped the waste from the, when you drill a well, all the stuff comes up from the ground. You got to put that stuff somewhere. And they would put it in these waste pits that leached into the soils and groundwater. And they also put pipes in the side of many of them, and they ran off. It rains a lot in the forest. So when it would rain, they would run the contents into the nearby rivers and streams. And they set up a system to deliberately pollute and poison the ecosystem, and you might not know this, but there's a whole international movement now to make ecocide a fifth atrocity crime, like genocide.
Yeah.
Ecocide. And ecocide is defined by most as the deliberate destruction of the natural environment such that it can no longer sustain human life. And what Chevron did in this part of Ecuador, to me, is the very definition of ecocide.
Yeah. And that's probably not the only place that they're doing that. I mean, this is something that's probably going on in how many places?
Well, it's funny you say that, because there's a friend of mine, Dr. Nan Greer, who's in the process of doing a study of all of Chevron's environmental problems around the world. And she's discovered some devastating evidence that in dozens of countries around the world, Chevron is facing massive liabilities for polluting, not just Ecuador. I think Ecuador might be the worst because it was like deliberate and it went on for so long, and the environment's such a delicate ecosystem that's really the lungs of the planet, and there's indigenous peoples. I mean, there's so many factors that come together down there, but they do this in a lot of countries.
Yeah, it's really disgusting, and then they get away with it, and yet it seems that the government has been taken over by them. I've seen they handed their case off to Chevron. So that's what I need you to really walk me through is how can this be happening? Okay. Like, I don't understand.
This is the craziest part. I think it's insane. Yeah. Basically, Chevron wanted to figure out a way to stop me from doing my work. So they sued me in the US. They denied me a jury, and a judge found that I had bribed a trial judge in Ecuador, which is totally false, and it's been rejected by 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada who've actually looked at the evidence. But this one judge, this one U.S. trial judge, determined that, and on the basis of that, he imposed court costs on me in favor of Chevron. And I didn't have the money. I'm talking about millions of dollars. I mean, I didn't have the money. Chevron then got him to issue an order to get control of my computer and cell phone on the theory that I was hiding money, and they knew that was BS. But what they really wanted from those devices was to find out our strategy, where we were going to file lawsuits to enforce the judgment, communications among attorneys, all the attorney-client privilege information that is sacrosanct in the legal profession.
Right.
So rather than turn over my computer and cell phone to Chevron, I appealed the order and asked Judge Kaplan to stay his order. And while his order that I was appealing was pending, he charged me with criminal contempt of court for not complying with his order, the lawfulness I was challenging on appeal. That's never happened in America before. That's my crime.
Right. And then they brought in a private firm.
Under what's an obvious pretext.
So how is it that they're prosecuting you with an outside firm? Like I don't understand how you can do that.
Yeah, this is another key point. When a judge charges a lawyer with criminal contempt of court, it's in theory, he's disobeyed a court order, but it's such a arrogant way that the lawyer went about it. It's criminal as opposed to civil contempt, which results in a fine, not jail. I don't think what I did is civil contempt, much less criminal contempt. But a judge is required to take the charges to the regular federal prosecutor, in this case, the SDNY in New York. The SDNY rejected the case, refused to prosecute me. So Judge Kaplan, Louis A. Kaplan's the name of the judge, he appointed a private law firm to prosecute me, which astounded me. You would think if the regular feds don't want to go, it ends, right? No. He appoints a private law firm. They asked for me to be locked up. And I started to research the law firm after I got locked up in my home, and I realized they had extensive and close financial ties to the oil and gas industry, including to Chevron. And that Chevron They admitted 7 months after they locked me up that Chevron had been a client of the firm in 2018, the year before they locked me up. So I'm being prosecuted by Chevron. This is the first corporate prosecution in U.S. history. I believe it is illegal and unconstitutional. But Kaplan, who charged me, also appointed the judge, Loretta Preska, instead of going through the random case selection process, which is required by rules here. Loretta Preska is a leader of the Federalist Society. Chevron is a major funder of the Federalist Society, which is a pro-corporate, right-wing legal group. So I'm being prosecuted by a Chevron law firm. The judge has financial ties to Chevron, and the charging judge, whose charges are rejected by the regular prosecutor, also has investments in Chevron. So this is a Chevron show through and through. It's not a fair proceeding. It's not a fair trial. And it's an embarrassment, I think, for our country. But it's happening, and I'm really asking everyone to notice it and to step in and raise hell about it, because the only thing that's going to stop it is public outcry and some actions by congresspersons, by the Department of Justice. But people need to stand up, man. This is so wrong. It is such a violation of the rule of law. It is so inconsistent with the values of any kind of democracy. But yet it's happening, and happening in particular to me and my family. So we need help. We need people to speak out.
Okay, so tell me, what was the judge's name again?
The judge who charged me is Louis A. Kaplan.
And that's why you're having the contempt charge. This is the person who is holding you in criminal contempt of court.
That's
is
correct.
This person? Yeah.
He's charged me. He's charged me.
Right.
I haven't been found guilty yet.
No,
but
I
don't have a jury. But yeah.
I mean, but you've already basically been now incarcerated for 20 months for contempt. I mean, that's already outrageous, even if you were in contempt.
Speaking with Steve Donziger, a climate
Exactly
justice.
right.
And I think it's very important, Steve. Stephen, if you're really, you touched on a very important issue here, which is something that has become, I think, probably a very overlooked part of our electoral process in this country, is how much money and the kinds of money that a lot of our judges are getting, whether at the federal level, at the state level. And when it comes to corporate special interests, I mean, everybody's aware of just how corporate bought Amy Coney Barrett is to be on the Supreme Court. But I don't think people really understand that this trickles down throughout the entire judicial system. And today it is systemic to the point of, I try to tell people the best way that I can explain what corporate special interest does to our society is no different than, let's take a step back to the 1980s or the 1990s. You've got the Zenith stereo system. You've got a whole bunch of different stuff. And when you look behind the TV, you've literally got 50 wires and cords literally entangled amongst each other. You don't even know where to begin or how to unwind it.
Jason's office still looks like that.
There you go. And so that to me is not just our electoral system, but that's really our judicial system. And big money seems to be what is dominating in a way that I don't think people are really grasping. You mentioned the Federalist Society and the lengths that they are going to in order to basically, I think they're just trying to use you as an example. They are making an example.
Well, they don't want anyone else to be doing this.
Correct.
They don't want anybody else.
They're weaponizing
I was just
me.
going to ask you, they've never paid. Chevron has still not paid, right? Like that's the thing. They still haven't complied with their judgment.
They owe the money and they won't pay. And now, they're spending a lot of money, but not to pay the judgment to the people they poison. They're spending the money on law firms to attack those who held them accountable. I mean, it's an outrage. And, but it's, look, let's be frank here. We're not naive. This is a corporate playbook invented by Chevron, used by the entire fossil fuel industry to try to intimidate people into not challenging them. For their pollution and the harms they are causing our planet, so they can try to wrest a few more years of profits out of this dying industry by intimidating lawyers and intimidating human rights defenders. That's their calculation, and they think they can get away with it. It's up to us to make that not work.
Right. It reminds me of that movie Class Action, where they had figured out that it was cheaper to just have people die and sue than to actually fix the car. So they've actually calculated that it's more efficient for them to spend their money going after you than it would be to pay what they owe.
But it's my job and the job of those who care to make sure that calculation doesn't turn out how they hope it does. In other words, to raise the cost to them of this kind of outrageous behavior to such a degree that it actually makes it worth it to pay the judgment rather than continue to attack the lawyers. But it's a challenge, no doubt.
What do we do?
Yeah, well, we have a question from Jamie Friend. Is there, obviously the Supreme Court, that's a whole other issue, but she mentions the ACLU. Are there any major organizations that are speaking out on your behalf? I haven't noticed any major political figures speaking out on your behalf, aside, obviously, like I said, from Susan Sarandon and Marianne Williamson. It doesn't really seem like I've seen that many people really putting this front and center. Are there any organizations that are doing their part to try to back you up in this circumstance?
Well, we need more support. There's no doubt, but we have gotten a fair amount of support as of late, last 2-3 months. I mean, several human rights groups have written a letter to the DOJ asking for them to review the case, including Amnesty International, Global Witness, Amazon Watch, a bunch of really big environmental and human rights groups. Apart from that, 6 congresspersons, including AOC, Jim McGovern, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Rashida Tlaib, and Jamie Raskin, have signed a letter to Merrick Garland demanding a review of the case. 68 Nobel laureates have demanded the case be dismissed, and really hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers have spoken out and filed all sorts of complaints against Judge Kaplan. So we have support. We need to grow that support. But I think you raise an issue when you say you haven't heard of it. Well, I think one reason why many people haven't heard of this case is it's being ignored by the big media. I mean, the New York Times reports on human rights violations all over the world. My apartment is a 30-minute walk from their newsroom, and they've never sent a reporter here. I'm a Harvard Law grad. I was in the same graduating class as President Obama. Not that that means anything, except for this point. Wouldn't you think someone who came out of Harvard Law, who's won the biggest environmental judgment ever and has been locked up in a Chevron prosecution for almost 2 years in a misdemeanor? I'm sorry. You can hate my guts. That's a newsworthy story for the New York Times. Where the hell are they? Do your job. I have reporters flying over here from Europe, 4,000 miles from Germany to interview me in my living room. New York Times, again, a 30-minute walk away. They don't come. So that's why you haven't heard of it.
Well, yeah, they're beholden to the same people that are prosecuting you. It's all the same people.
And this is a great point. When people wonder about, what stopped Obama, Jamie Dimon and a few other people is what stopped him. It's very easy to get seduced by the allure of Wall Street and everything that can come with it. And I don't think people really grasp what that means. I mean, I could tell people to watch the movie The Devil's Advocate, and that in a way just kind of, but it kind of just gives you an idea of how even the most well-intended person can be overwhelmed by the whole prospect of becoming, one of the masters of the universe, if you will, if you simply turn a blind eye to all the atrocities that those that make you put you in that position are committing on a daily basis. The people who are willing to say, no, I am not taking this. I'm going to fight this. That's why we were talking right before you came on about the benevolence of sorts of Kashama Sawant out in Seattle. The fact that she is willing to challenge power in a way that almost nobody else in this country is willing to do, not even Bernie Sanders, I think really speaks to the fact that it's so easy, it seems like, to buy people off. I mean, everybody has a price, but you know what? When somebody like Jeff Bezos decides that he doesn't want to pay for his failed investment, he just buys off a United States senator to basically write legislation to say, yeah, he's getting a $10 billion subsidy. Oh, and by the way, when I get that money, I'm going to go buy the biggest major movie studio in Los Angeles. So to me, it's the corruption within the system is embedded in so many different ways. Your case just happens to be one that is really caught in the crossfire of big industry that will not tolerate under any circumstances getting in the way of their bottom line.
Yeah, you said something really interesting that I caught in an interview that you did, and I wrote it down. I actually had to go back and listen to it because I put little quotes on it, and I thought it was really cool. And you said that what was going on in Ecuador is this idea of privatizing profits but socializing costs. And I thought that that was really, really like clever. And I was wondering if you could sort of just explain that. I mean, I understand what you were talking about, but in terms of the case, if you could talk about how that works.
By the way, if anyone wants to help, go to donzigerdefense.com. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. No, that's good. Yeah.
You can learn more about the case. You can donate to the Legal Defense Fund, or just, if you don't want to donate, totally cool. Come anyway, sign up. You'll get our newsletter. We need to build this. It's not just about me. It's about the movement. It's about, stopping global warming and dealing with the climate issue and saving our planet. And obviously, it's about environmental justice, accountability for these polluters.
Yeah.
Okay, to answer that question, though, thank you for that. What Chevron has done in Ecuador is they went in, drilled, took the good stuff, that is the marketable oil, ran it through pipelines to refineries, brought it up to the United States, sold it, made billions of dollars. The bad part, that is the water production, the drilling muds, the stuff that comes with oil, wherever you drill, there's waste. They just dump that into the environment at almost zero cost to themselves. If this was the United States, they would have had to pay for a proper waste disposal, at least in most states, and it would have cost them an additional many millions of dollars to do it that way. So to save a certain amount of money, that is to increase their already high profits to obscene levels, they decided to socialize the costs onto the most vulnerable people of the planet, indigenous groups. They just dumped it and let them deal with it. And, call it what you want. To me, it's privatizing profits, socializing costs. Another way to look at it is they're stealing. They're stealing. In other words, they took the wealth of the people in Ecuador out of the country, enriched their shareholders and the management, and left the people who had this totally prosperous environment for thousands of years with a completely poisoned existence, and they become impoverished, and they've had to move away, and they've lost much of their culture and their language and their cohesion and their lives.
See, that to me is a genocide. That's a genocide.
It's a genocide or ecocide or whatever you want to call it.
Their people are dying when they lose their access to water.
It's a crime. And the people who made these decisions and carried them out, I think, are criminally, they're not just civilly liable, they're criminally culpable in my mind.
Yeah. And where is the government of Ecuador in this? Like, where do they fall into any of this? You got a ruling in your favor there.
Yeah.
And where are they in terms of enforcing that?
Well, this is a private lawsuit between private citizens and a private company, just to be clear. The government is not a party to the lawsuit.
No, but in terms of enforcing the judgment that, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But the government of Ecuador is an important player here, and they really should, A, do more to deal with the problem, and B, defend the hell out of their own country's courts and the judgment, and they have done that to a degree. But ultimately, I want to be very clear. The one entity that made the decision to dump the toxic waste is Chevron, not the government of Ecuador. Chevron is 100% responsible. It doesn't mean the government shouldn't be doing things in the meantime. They should, okay? It is their country and people are dying. And the Ecuador government needs to do a lot more. But, every time they do more, Chevron just says, oh, it's not our responsibility. It's their responsibility. They're dealing with it. We don't have to pay the judgment. It's a little bit delicate, but Chevron needs to pay the judgment. Ecuador's government needs to do everything it can in the meantime to save lives.
Yeah.
A good friend of the show, Jordan Chariton, who you may know of Status Quo, he's been covering the poison pipelines in Flint, Michigan for, I think, 7 years now. And it took him for years for him to get a single story in The Intercept in order for them to run it. When you're coming for big oil, they will buy off whoever they have to buy off in order to make a story go away.
I've seen that happen time and time again with the media over the last 10, 15 years. Reporters start down with a story and then it just dies.
Well, we will always hark back to the two biggest legislative things that happened over the course of what I guess you would say is when Reaganomics really took shape. But the elimination of the Fairness Doctrine in 87, then of course the Telecom Act in 96, was really the power consolidation period where, corporate media just became the fourth estate, where if you need anything protected in terms of corporate special interests, you just ship it to MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, and they will do your bidding for the price. And that's what happens. They will not cover this because it is not in the corporate special interests of those who give to these shows in order for the story to get out there. And the truth is, this story's everywhere. We all know what roughshod, big oil is running over this planet. But now we have an opportunity to really highlight just how ruthless they are by trying to rewrite the rule of law in the United States, because that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
We see people everyone would always talk about how, Trump is pillaging the Constitution and all that. The stuff that doesn't get talked about is really what pillages the Constitution, because they don't want this to become a story. They don't want people to actually think that this country isn't bought off by special interests. It is. And if we can do our part, as Katie has done her part, and everyone else does their part, this story needs to get out there, because this is serious, and this will have far-reaching ramifications if this is allowed to continue, because it's only getting worse. I mean, as you know, Exxon knew back in 1977 what they were doing, and they were able to make it go away. Mm-hmm. You can only imagine how much worse this is going to get. I mean, we live in Florida, so you can only imagine how devastating of an environmental circumstance we live in every day. Yeah. If we even attempt to fight back against Big Sugar, NextEra Energy, any of these major organizations, and we have an impact, I can't even imagine the type of hammer that they're going to bring down against any type of environmental movement here. So we must set the precedent.
And look, this is why these corporate interests have focused so much in the last 20, 30 years on controlling the courts, because ultimately many of these battles are going to be decided by judges, and they want those judges to be pro-corporate. And, you saw this, obviously you saw what Mitch McConnell did to Merrick Garland when Obama nominated him. You saw what Trump did over the last 4 years working with Mitch McConnell to stack the entire federal judiciary with young, right-wing, and many unqualified judges. Oh. And you can't go into a federal appellate court in the United States anymore and get a fair panel if you're representing poor people or victims of human rights or victims of pollution. I mean, the panels are it doesn't mean you can't win, but it's harder to win. It structurally favors the corporation all the time. The judges almost always come out of the corporate law firms, or they're former federal prosecutors with kind of a conservative bent. I'm generalizing, but I'm telling you, this is true to a great extent now in our country. And that's why I think people need to, among other things, and there's been great citizen activism and great victories. I mean, you saw what happened at the Exxon and Chevron shareholder meetings yesterday. They got spanked by their own shareholders over climate issues. So there's so many ways to make progress, but we need to understand that if we don't focus on making our courts fair, as opposed to just a weapon for the corporate right, we are not going to be able to solve many of these problems that really pose an existential threat to our existence, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, the judiciary has definitely been very contaminated at an exponential rate over the past, I'd say, few years, in a way that it's just going to have such lasting repercussions. And I look at the Supreme Court justices that were appointed by Trump, and it's freaking me out. Like the fact that Kavanaugh never tried a case. He never tried a case.
Can you imagine? I mean,
no. And it's like, I sit here and it's
has Amy Coney Barrett even tried a case?
No, she hasn't. These are people that are basically being bred to be in the positions that they're in. They're essentially being groomed into these positions. And it's a little Stepfordish and creepy. And, I sit here and I always have Thurgood Marshall over my shoulder. And I think, this is somebody who tried 32 cases before the Supreme Court, before he was appointed to the Supreme Court. And now we have justices that have never tried a case. And I just think.
You make an excellent point. Thurgood Marshall, one of the greatest lawyers and jurists in the history of our country, maybe the greatest, given what he had to overcome, what he was facing, would never, in today's political environment, get on the Supreme Court.
No.
Even though he's more qualified than anyone currently on it.
Yeah. But way too revolutionary, way too representing regular people. But,
the corporate world, when he got on the court, did not have the power and control of our government like it does today. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm older than y'all, but I'm not going to tell you my age. But I've seen a trajectory since Ronald Reagan was elected of just increasing corporate consolidation of power in the United States of America, to the point where, I mean, in my situation, I'm being prosecuted criminally by Chevron. And, this is the fundamental battle of our time. There's a lot of battles. There's income inequality. There's police racism. There's so many problems right now in our country. But I can tell you that the corporate control of our society either creates many of these problems or exacerbates existing ones to such a degree you can't really propose serious solutions to them, because our legislative branches don't know how to solve problems anymore because they're so worried about the corporate contributions. So we have a serious fundamental problem with how our democracy, if you want to call it that, is structured at the moment. And there's just way too much money and too much control by the rich and by the corporations to really do things in a fair way. And these problems just manifest again and again and again over all sorts of issues year after year, and nothing seems to get better. And I'm telling you, in my view, it's because of what I'm dealing with personally. There's just the corporations, the unlimited money has created a situation where I really question whether we really have a democracy anymore. I mean, we have some form of a distorted democracy, but we just don't have a legislative branch that can deal with our problems, in any kind of fundamental way.
I don't think we actually have a democracy. I don't even think we have a functioning republic. I think we have a very dysfunctional republic. And the way that we know this, and this is actually, it's really just basic. It's just common sense, right? So if you have 3/4 of the American people support something like, let's just say, Medicare for all, it could be legalization of marijuana, it could be whatever it is, or getting out of all the wars or whatever it is. And yet those things don't happen. So if you have the majority of people want something and those things don't happen, there is a disconnect in between that is proving to me that we have a dysfunctioning republic. So I don't, it doesn't need to, we could sit there and try to figure out why and how, but it's clearly not functioning. We have representatives that have approval ratings under 18%, but yet they keep getting reelected.
Yes.
So obviously something's very broken or fixed, whatever,
I'll add this to your very important point. It's broken in the eyes of the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
It's working perfectly fine in the eyes of the elites who are profiting from the broken system in which we live.
Yeah.
We
talk about
they broke
that.
it deliberately. They don't want it to function like a real democracy because that would threaten some of their profits.
Yeah. Yeah. And then ultimately what we're seeing, and we talk about this a lot, is what I consider to be sort of like the death throes of late stage capitalism, and when you start talking like this and you get called out, communist, I was called a communist for supporting Medicare for all. I've been called all sorts of things in the past couple of years, but
I have a good friend who's in the chat who, she's a Republican and she thinks that we're going to turn into Venezuela.
Whatever. So, but it's really what we're talking about is just completely unfettered capitalism.
It is.
And that has now basically corrupted and infected every branch of government and the fourth estate, which to me is something that that's one of the reasons I'm so, passionate about Julian Assange's case, is because I feel like once you completely get rid of the fourth estate, that's it. I feel like that's kind of like a game over situation that I don't think people understand. But
our channel suffers immensely from suppression because we did do an Assange telethon, and that was just kind of
I did an Assange telethon.
Yeah, kind of put the red flag with Katie.
Oh, Katie co-hosted it. No, it was great. It was just it was once Merrick Garland got confirmed, it was basically the ask was we were flooding the Department of Justice.
I remember that.
Yeah, just
drop the
charges against you. Yeah, I mean, it's good to have an ask, but it's always just more about just the education and information and having people discussing the case. But I feel like this about your case. I think this is something that's very important and we need to be harping on. And I'm just, other than having people harassing Judge Kaplan, what else can we really, what can we be doing to help?
So again, if you go to donzigerdefense.com, the main ask right now is to get the Department of Justice to take the prosecution over from the Chevron law firm.
Okay.
Probably you're going to laugh at this, but I'm probably the only lawyer in America begging to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. That would make my day. Okay?
Right. Because they would drop it because it's ridiculous.
They would drop it. But even if they didn't, I could at least deal with a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't have locked me up. I mean, first of all, they declined the case, as I mentioned. So I would assume if they take it back, they'll drop it. But even if they don't, I can at least negotiate with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chevron lawyer won't even negotiate with me. I mean, about some sort of resolution. Hey, maybe I will give you the computer. Let's set up a protocol. Let me off house arrest so I can be a lawyer or do my human rights work. I mean, I need the DOJ to get this case back. So if you go to Donziger Defense, we have a way to contact the DOJ, and we're asking people to do it. Now, will it happen? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's the DOJ. But again, we're trying to generate as much pressure as we can.
Yeah.
Susan Sarandon, Marianne, Sting, Roger Waters, the Nobel laureates, Jody Williams. I mean, we really do have a lot of people making this ask right now, and they have definitely heard us because one of my lawyers has been interacting with someone over there. So we just keep needing to insist they uphold the rule of law and take the case out of the hands of the private Chevron law firm.
Yeah, it's just a matter of due process, people. It's all we're asking for is due process. It's really not that complicated.
I mean, you can have it, whatever opinion you might have of me. I mean, I hope it's positive, but that's not the issue. Okay, the issue is we cannot have corporate prosecutions in the United States of America. That is the number one issue right now.
Right. Yeah. That's up there, with the fact that we have private corrections institutions and it's a for-profit system, and it's just we're going to be completely subcontracted out. All government functions are going to be for profit and subcontracted out. You're going to have to have special insurance to be able to get the fire department to come out. And if you don't have full house coverage, they're only going to come out with the small hose instead of the large hose. I mean, this is getting crazy to me that we're privatizing our judicial system.
We're privatizing everything. There is there's nothing that's untouchable at this point. And it's been like this for a while. It seeps into everything. It seeps into, our sports. It seeps into, obviously the healthcare system has completely been overrun.
Yeah.
At some point, the dam is going to break. Now, is it just going to happen in one fell swoop, or is it going to be
we're working
slow,
on it? We're chipping away at it.
Yeah. But, and again, there has to be a united front, because I think one of the most difficult things for a lot of people to do is check their egos at the door and have thick skin. It's certainly the biggest problem that I see, particularly on the political left, is this idea that you have to understand that if we're getting anywhere, and I mean anywhere, you have to have a non-corporate, non-partisan labor movement.
Yeah,
that
people
is
movement.
it. That is the only way this is going to change, because there are a lot more of us together than there are of those in charge.
Yes.
But if you allow yourself to be divided along whatever political lines there may be,
the red team and the blue team, we're not big fans of the red and the blue team.
And then it seeps into even deeper divides than that: progressive versus moderate, conservative versus libertarian.
And I have an important question. Sure. So let's say you were able to get rid of the ankle monitor and you were free tomorrow, as you should be. What's next? What are you working on? What are you doing? What would you be doing if not this?
So much to do. I mean, I get contacted constantly by human rights victims to help them organize cases. I consult with groups that want to, do proxy battles with corporations over climate issues. I like to write. I want to do a book. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, I'm dying to get back to my work. I mean, it's not like I've left it. I mean, I'm still working on house arrest and doing all sorts of very productive things and gaining tons of support and talking to you guys and others, doing interviews. So it's not like I'm just sitting on my couch. I mean, I'm actually as involved now as I've ever been. and more people are paying attention, people who had not paid attention before. So we're building, we continue to build, but of course, with the ankle bracelet off, I could do a lot more. And I think, I don't mean to say this in a way that makes me look good, but like that's what Chevron fears. They don't want me to be free because they don't, you know, look, we were successful. Let's just remember that. This is happening because we won. Let's be honest. Okay, they're attacking me because we won.
Yeah.
And what I have to go in a second, but what I want people to take away from this is, even though I'm locked up, think big picture. Okay, we won the case. They're taking extreme and I believe nakedly corrupt measures to come after me. They're being exposed little by little. The trial they just happened, which have last week against me, they looked terrible. Everyone could see what was happening. And we just need to keep speaking out about it. And we keep needing to support the people of Ecuador, most importantly, who are dying from their pollution, as well as their lawyers, including first and foremost me, because I'm locked up. So it's all connected.
Yeah.
You know, we all need to watch it and understand it. And again, go to donzigerdefense.com to learn more. But we need to build this movement. When I say this movement, I mean there's tons going on to deal with climate change around the world. You know, but this particular movement is the movement to protect the rule of law, such that those who do the front lines work are not going to be attacked and made bankrupt or disbarred or locked up, because all those things have happened to me.
Yeah.
So that's this movement, and it's a critical piece of the larger movement to save the planet, because if you can't, the lawyers can't hold the polluters accountable, we're never going to save the planet, in my opinion.
That's their goal. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
They don't want people doing this work.
No.
Can't drink oil.
No. Well, you know what? No, but it's like the Lorax. We're going to be living in a bubble and have to pay for air. I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous.
Stephen, last question before you go. Obviously, it's not easy to be under house arrest, especially to the length that you have been under house arrest. How have you? Although,
in all fairness, for the past couple of years, there was a good solid year where a lot of people were essentially under house arrest. This past year is not. You haven't, of all the times to be stuck in your house, you've missed the least.
Well, it all depends.
That's what I'm saying.
It all depends on how much square footage he has in his New York City apartment. You got to keep that in mind as well. How have you been able to deal with it? Because obviously it's not easy. I am sure being able to have a lot of people reaching out to communicate with you definitely helps. But what has that experience been like for you?
Well, it's been difficult, but I'm really fortunate. You know, I have a great family. My wife Lauren, son Matthew, plus an extended family, plus everyone who cares, plus my clients, plus the journalists who want to hear my message, like y'all, lawyers, Nobel laureates. You know, I've been extremely and vitally engaged in the work while under house arrest. Now, I hate being under house arrest, but I'm also, you know, my wife and I also decided that we were going to do our best to create some degree of happiness in our home every day. And I think we've largely succeeded, you know, but I need my passport back and I need to get back to work. And I need my freedom. And you know, more importantly, our society shouldn't put up with a situation where anybody, me or anyone else, is put in this situation anymore.
No, free Steve, everybody. We need to free Steve.
Go to donzigerdefense.com to help Stephen out. We're going to keep spreading the word. We thank everybody that has done that. Obviously,
we'll put this on our website.
Yeah. One other thing is, if you really want to get regular updates, follow me on Twitter at @Donziger, and I'm tweeting multiple times a day about stuff. There's a lot of interesting things happening all the time on this case.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll connect it on our stuff, and we'll put it in the description. And
congratulations to y'all for the work you do. It's important, and I'm really honored to.
Where are you from?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Wow.
Because he says y'all. Look, let me tell you something. He could be sitting in New York, but when you say y'all, then you know that somebody's from somewhere they're from. Like that.
You can't take the southern thing out of the.
Well, as a born Floridian, he understands your pain.
I'm a second generation native Floridian, and you're not that much older than me. You're not that much older than me.
I'm probably quite a bit older. What part of Florida are you from?
North Miami Beach.
Yeah.
Second generation. My dad was born in Miami. I was born in 1971.
Okay, well, I got you beat by many years.
Wow.
Many years? I don't know.
Well, a few years.
I will tell you this: you look infinitely younger live in person than you do in your photo. Like you look like, yeah, I think.
Well, I think your spirits are definitely perking up, and if there's anything else that we could do to help,
thank you. We will
certainly
stay
look forward
tuned.
to. Yes, we will definitely be in touch. Please keep us posted. And guys, once again, S. Donziger on Twitter is a great place to follow.
And everybody
Steven.
be aware of what's going on.
Please, 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 if you can, in whatever capacity you are able to help, and we, certainly want to get this out to as many people as we can. If I can find this thing one more time, it is DonzigerDefense.com. Anything that you could do to help Steven out. This is a monumental case. Can't stress that enough. We have to do everything in our capacity to fight back against big oil, and this is one of the ways that we can. We have beaten them in a landmark case. Now we got to make sure that we can continue to beat them going forward.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Well, hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steven. Have a great evening. Bye-bye. Well, needless to say, he really has done he's done a real service for the country.
And yet I will say I do think it's amusing that I had to text Katie in order to get him to get on this to get off of her because he was engaged in conversation.
No, and that's fine. But at least Katie, listen, you texted her and he was in here within like 5 minutes.
Well, I texted her and I'm like, where's my guest?
Well, she probably didn't realize like how over the time they were going. So to their credit,
they're just sitting there shooting the shit. She don't care.
Great interview. I mean, he was here with us for almost an hour. I mean, again, I thought it was, it really meant a lot.
Oh, I find him like totally like he's adorable.
That's the type of person that is putting their livelihood there. And again, you never know.
I think of him the way I think of people like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning or people that are basic, or John Kiriakou. Yeah. People that put their own liberty at stake for what is the right thing to do. And Steve wasn't even purposefully doing that. He was just, he just won. He won a case. Like, that's just crazy to me that he's being the reprisal, and that it's just being it's like a kangaroo court. That's not even a real thing.
Well, that's most of
Judge appoints a private firm that's run by this is the most ridiculous. And we say that we're bringing liberty to other countries.
This is the thing about any of these
what a joke.
Special groups. It's no different than when we made a big deal about the Center for American Progress. Who do you think funds Neera Tanden's organization? It's people like the ones that fund the Federalist Society. They just, again, it depends on what the cause is, what they're trying to accomplish.
But it represents big oil, big pharma, military industrial complex, big banks. It represents those people. It's not in our interest.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to be aware of what's going on in this case and I would like to, again, if we have the access to be able to updating our webpage, which is important to me, like tomorrow, when people go on to generationalchange.com, it should be a clip. It should be like a link to this and a little picture or something about Steve. Like, this is my idea for keeping like current and promoting things so that people know like that we have an ask.
I think I'm going to have to find another person that can manage. But we'll work on that.
Oh, I cannot believe we're having this again.
No, it's not that. It's just availability. And I think we need that degree of consistency, which is key.
Yeah.
I don't know if the current person.
We need somebody to handle our website for us. And it would really only be like an hour or two a week of time.
Yeah, not a lot of time.
No, it's really just updating calendar or doing that. We really just need somebody that can put in a couple hours a week, and we'd be actually happy to pay somebody to do this. So if you know somebody out there, if somebody wants to be in charge of our website, we would maintain the calendar, put up little new things, whatever website stuff it is. But yeah. That's my thought. We need that, and we will pay.
We really can't emphasize enough how important this case is.
No.
It's very important.
Can I just also give my other help wanted, because I'm also willing to pay something else.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm really wanting is somebody who is very good at doing grant research. Writing grant proposals also a plus. That's something that I think I would be good at doing. But the issue is really knowing where to find the money, how to get the best money for what we're trying to do. I have a few projects that I'm thinking about. One is we're going to do a community closet. I've spoken about you're going to hurt her. I've spoken about the community closet a few times, and I now have the idea that it should be mobile. And I would really love a grant to get a trailer to get us up and running and have something that can go to different neighborhoods.
Careful.
Why are you doing this?
Hold on.
You're hurting her. So anyway, if somebody is out, I'm trying to.
because she literally hooked her paw. She's like,
Okay. So, what I'm really interrupted the whole thing. So I'm really looking for somebody who is good, and people keep leaving because this is happening. I'm really looking for someone to do grant research and could help us possibly bring in some money to do some of these projects. So if either of those positions sound like something you're interested in, reach out.
yes.
But
Insistent. And we really appreciate all of you as always.
Also be a Patreon.
Yes.
Don't forget, all of our links are in the description. If you can help us out as a Patreon member, we actually had last night was our first members only Zoom call. And I wish there were more people that came on. I guess I just sort of put a higher.
You would have loved learning more about community gardens.
It was really good. It was a good presentation. And we're going to do them. I want to say we'll do them the last week of the month. I'll have a special Zoom meeting. If you're a $5 or $10 Patreon, if you're a $10 Patreon, you get the jersey.
How awesome is this jersey, baby?
It's a great jersey. Cool. See, look, here comes the sun.
It's good stuff.
Purple. It's great. And if you're a $5 Patreon, you get the purple and orange hemp bracelet that are made by Macy on Etsy. And so there's just some perks, but we will be doing a monthly meeting. We have a beach cleanup coming up on Tuesday. It'll be our first Tuesday, Trash and Taco Tuesday. We're going to go even later. We're going to meet at 6 o'clock at the pavilions on the beach.
That way it's
Garfield.
Because again, it is getting hot down here.
And it's called Charno Park. I don't know if anybody knows that, but it's Garfield and Connecticut Street. There's pavilions on the beach. We meet there 6 o'clock. We'll do a cleanup. We'll do tacos. What else is coming up? What do we have on? Do we have anybody set up for Monday?
I think we're working on potentially having.
We're going to do a special.
We're going to do something for Memorial Day.
Yeah,
with veterans.
We're going to do a veterans.
We're going to do some stuff. Yeah. So definitely tune in. And then next Thursday, we are going to have Chris Smalls come back. He is a friend of the show, and of course, Chris Smalls is. If you thought that the fight to unionize Amazon has ended, it has not. It is just getting started.
Good.
He is attempting to unionize in Staten Island, New York. Boy, that would be a win. And Chris is definitely one of the true leaders of the labor movement.
He is a contemporary labor leader.
He is. And we're really looking forward to having him back. So with that said, we appreciate you guys as always. Time for some late dinner.
Always late. Peace out.